What's up, everybody? This is Off the Top. Today we'll be talking about some hip hop, and it's me, Jordan.
Nice little rhyme right there. It's Julian on the other side.
Yeah, I figured that would be appropriate for today's talking about music and hip hop and how things have changed and what's going on currently. And I just want to touch on what got us talking about this specifically.
I think it was more so rap artist Drake and rap artist Pusha T had exchanged some lyrics in what they call a rap beef or battle, and it exposed each side in certain ways, and one side came back a little bit stronger than the other.
Yeah, and for those of you who are following along or want the cliff notes of this, Pusha T is not somebody you want to mess with, and we're waiting on Drake's response right now. It's been a couple days, but anyway, to jump to kind of like the grand scheme of things, as far as hip hop goes, are you much of a hip hop fan? I mean, I know you, but just for the audience out there.
Yeah, I enjoy hip hop. I enjoy a lot of different styles, versions, sounds. I also like a good amount of smooth jazz. Don't like country. If you like country, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it like that. And I also I also like classic rock, but country's a no-go for me.
Gotcha. So Julian's down with whatever as long as it's not country. As far as it goes for me specifically, yeah, I do enjoy hip hop. I think it's definitely evolved over time to more of a, I don't know how to describe it besides almost sugary and more of a digestible and like, you know, you don't have to really sit down and listen to it very hard. You can just kind of, oh, this is catchy. You know, I like this melody and whatnot. And I think that there's a good place for that in hip hop. I mean, currently it's popular. It's going all over the place. But before hip hop, I felt like was more maybe message based, or at least, you know, wasn't as uniform. Like I feel like today you'll find a song is really closely related to another song that comes out, and so they kind of like have a very, very similar formula of how that song is made.
Yeah, I think if you look at earlier genres of music, whether it be hip hop when it first started and that kind of sound, which was very, you know, 1-2 kind of rhyme on rhyme, very simple, then hip hop wasn't as big, and you kind of go into like rock and hair bands, and they're like a very emotionally charged. Like I think when I listen to that music, like whether it be Def Leppard or Guns N' Roses, Queen, AC/DC, it's all very emotionally charged, like good time music. And then you kind of progress into, you know, early 90s hip hop, where you take that emotionally charged and you put it into something like NWA and F the Police and like all of these critical moments in African American history, which is very closely related to hip hop. And you get this stuff that's really lyrically based, emotionally charged. You move to early 2000s and you have late 90s, early 2000s, you have like Outkast and Ja Rule and 50 Cent and all these other kind of, which you get this mixture of like a message, but a good catchy beat, like dance type song. And then you move a little bit further away and you kind of almost gone full circle, where these songs, like you said, are more like kind of catchy, very simple. Not to say there isn't people who are, you know, super lyrically strong. I mean, I guess I skipped over Nas in the early 90s too, but.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually really cool. I enjoyed how you compared, you know, metal and a different genre of music to hip hop, and the fact that they kind of took the same, you know, steps as far as not geographically, but as far as like you can feel the mood in them and how they kind of swayed and evolved. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of message in hip hop, and historically there has been. Obviously that's not always the case, just like today. Like we've been saying that it's been a lot of catchy stuff, but in the same tune, I mean, you have artists or lyricists like, you know, Kendrick Lamar or Childish Gambino. And I mean, other people, I would maybe even put Pusha T as a lyricist in there, that are still pushing, like, you know, sending a message with their songs as well. And I'm really curious now, Julian. What is one of your, like, probably, if you had a most favorite hip hop artist, who would it be?
Andre 3000.
Andre 3000.
Yeah, easy. Greatest storyteller of all of hip hop. If you don't know who Andre 3000 is, he's a part of Outkast. Put on quite a few songs. Usually kills every verse. Has a very intelligent man with a very good way with words to put them into song to tell a story and kind of make it fun. Him and Big Boy were a great duo. I'd pay a lot of money to see Outkast in concert, but I doubt they'll ever go in concert again. How about you?
So I'm a really big lyricist fan, and so I would have to say, like, top would be Kendrick Lamar, at least in my top 3 as far as artists go, whatever genre. I just really enjoy how he kind of like delivers a story with, his songs, and regardless if it's just one song that he's telling a story in or a whole album, it's always on point as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I know you and I talked, I think it was 2 weeks ago now at this point, about Kendrick Lamar winning a Pulitzer Prize and how that, works. Was it one of those things that his team was smart enough to realize, like, hey, if we send this over to some guy and they analyze it, he has a shot at winning because, this album, damn, tells a story? Or if, you go on and they just that group heard it and said, all right, this is the story.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I haven't researched much of that to really understand how, a hip-hop artist and a rapper would win a Pulitzer Prize, because, normally you wouldn't see that happening. So I feel like there was some sort of intricate steps or something that hasn't been taking place in the past that had to occur for him to win that. But still, I feel like that shows how much of a storyteller and how skilled he is to kind of, granted, there's a intersecting balance between those two worlds as far as like, what it would take to win a Pulitzer Prize in the genre and, maybe a storytelling or like, what would be a journalist role and, storytelling in hip hop. But I think it's very interesting that he won that. Like, at first I thought it was like some sort of, like I read something on The Onion or something where it wasn't true, but
yeah, it's interesting too, because I don't ever really think of the Pulitzer Prize besides the time I was in elementary school and you'd see this little badge on like different books or something like that. But I never really thought of it in the terms of like music and artistry. And I don't know if maybe they've done it before for other albums and maybe Kendrick Lamar is just the first one we're relevant of, but it seems like it's one of the first to do it and kind of set that path.
Yeah, definitely. And so what do you think as far, if you could be if you were a fortune teller, what do you think? Right now, currently we have kind of the catchier side of hip hop, like you've said. What do you think the next step is? Do you think we're going to go diverge from that and go like super message based again? Or is it going to just be, catchy for the rest of the...
I don't know if I have an exact answer. I think the past few genres from mid to late 2000s, you look at like a huge genre of auto-tune with T-Pain and what he did and a little bit of Akon, and then you move to like the 2010 and earlier where you kind of have... It's a mix of like a unique sound, like Drake comes onto the scene, Kanye does a few albums that you haven't really heard, or like you're kind of mastering the sounds and the tracks a little bit different. And right now, mid to late 10s, that's really weird to say, but you have like this, what they call SoundCloud or mumble rap, like these kids who have access to technology to put out music and, spearheaded by who they call Lil Yachty. And then you have all these other little guys in the mix, I guess, no pun intended, but all these other rappers who are following that trend. So I think the next thing we hear is something that's going to be very, just a unique or different sound, right? Like, I wouldn't consider Post Malone a rapper, but what Post Malone's doing is winning a ton of rap awards, but it's like a very big fusion of a lot of genres of music.
Yeah, I definitely think that just to touch on your most, the one that you delivered last as far as a point, Post Malone, I feel like infuses quite a bit of, and I think he's one of those artists that also kind of tiptoes in a little bit of I would say even like a tiny bit of rock, to a little bit of like R&B, to obviously hip hop. He kind of infuses several elements to his actual songs and like, his musical presence. It's funny that you mentioned, obviously I laughed when you said the little guys, but as far as they go, I mean, I enjoy some of their names, and so just to point out some of them, because I'm a real fan. You have obviously Little Yachty, Little Uzi Vert,
Little Pump.
Yeah, Little Pump, which is one of my favorites. Little Xan. Yeah,
I guess all come to fruition from the Lil Wayne, and I guess he's still rapping or what he's doing. It will be interesting to see what music turns into. I think a lot of it diverges into hip hop, and maybe hip hop is ruining the market right now because you don't have a whole lot of unique sounds. Like, I don't listen to country. I made that clear early on, but I know from my friends that do listen to country that a lot of these new country artists are very hip hop infused in their sound. And even like you look at rock or something like that, still like Imagine Dragons, I guess if you call them rock or whatever you call them, or Maroon 5, I don't know what you call these bands nowadays, but they're still very hip hop infused, or that kind of upbeat style featuring hip hop artists. So it's very interesting to see maybe hip hop kind of tails off and you just get fusion music. If that's a thing, I just trademarked it.
Yeah, I think that you were pretty smart into saying that, it's not just hip hop that's kind of changing. And I think it would almost be like the popification of music currently right now. In a macro sense, I think music in general will kind of like sway and like weave into whatever the community or like the large populace is looking for at the time, regardless if it is, something to get behind as far as like a battle cry for, change in some sort of way, or even just good times, which I feel like nowadays, that's what we're looking for, is kind of something that's catchy, simple, and, we don't have to, that's not too heavy to digest, and it's something that's, light and, an easy time to just get into.
Yeah. And maybe that's why, maybe a relation to why hip hop is so prevalent now is, all of our technology or everything around us. Like they say, studies are showing people are having shorter attention spans because, like, if you're familiar with SportsCenter, people don't watch SportsCenter as much because you can go on Instagram or social media and see a highlight in 12 seconds and have to sit around for an hour-long program to see the top 10. And maybe that's what hip-hop does nowadays, is like all these younger kids or this generation has, can just catch a catchy song, doesn't have to really pay attention to it, super quick moving, a lot of different changes, don't really care about the lyrics or the message, and they move on. As I feel like you look at the old heads of hip hop who are really about like lyricists like Nas, MF Doom, a few other artists in that range that tell these very intricate stories. Maybe even Jay-Z's like first few blueprints. You talk about those, and then you kind of have this very different divergence of generations that listen to music. And I think the simple hip hop's really big in that young generation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell too, by, the artists that are coming out. I mean, now they're coming out as, in their 20s, their early 20s. Some of them are even 17 in Lil Pump's case. And so you kind of see it. And I think that one of the things that is, one of the things that is helping them do this, that I feel like some artists portrayed. So one thing that I really stuck with me is in J. Cole's last album, there's a song called 1985, and he basically talks about Lil Pump and how he's super successful at 17, but in the future of his career, he's going to need to make some big changes, because as this is a trend, it's not going to last for, it's not going to be perennial. Mm-hmm. And so he needs to make these changes. And so it shows that, it's, this is a curve. It's always a curve that, will have its ups and downs as far as what will be happening in it.
Yeah. And I think touching on that, there's a lot of young artists that come into the game, whatever genre it is. It's always interesting the amount of money that is being made today off of music that wasn't being made, earlier on. So you look at people like some of these new artists that have one single, like everyone knows a one-hit wonder, but some of the one-hit wonders nowadays are making so much money that they don't really necessarily have to make another song if they're smart with their money. The thing is, like, you're not smart with your money when you're buying, $80,000, $200,000 in jewelry, or you're buying, the newest McLaren or Lamborghini or something like that. So it will be interesting, the course, to see what hit wonders, what happens to them, as opposed to, the one hit wonders of the 80s or 90s who I feel like maybe made some other choices or were a little bit more mature in their decisions.
Yeah, good point. And so I'm really curious, do you know what happened to, I think his name was Tank, the Thong Song guy? I feel
Cisco.
like Cisco, that's what it is.
I'm not sure what Cisco's doing. I know his album did well with that song on it, but he probably did a couple festivals and maybe opened his own underwear line or something.
Yeah, and I mean, just the reason I ask is because to see what happens in the future, I think that you can really get a good idea by extrapolating on the past. And so I would say he's a one-hit wonder, or in that just area of artists. And so to see what happens to him. But I do believe that, especially with, the ability to see how everyone's life is, it makes it more pressing or maybe even more advantageous to flex your like power, your money and stuff. And so that's why they're maybe spending it on, cars or watches or jewelry. And also, I mean, like, let's be real, they're 20 and they're 17 and they're 18 and they're 19. So, how many smart 19-year-olds, smart 20-year-olds and smart 17-year-olds, with money, that is.
Yeah. And I guess you could also look at the case of like MC Hammer filing bankruptcy after his song. I don't know how much money he made from that song, but he probably still makes a lot of money from it today because it's still everywhere. And it's just very interesting to see the course of events that some artists choose and how they stick around or disappear over time. Would you rather be a hip hop artist or the lead singer of like a world-renowned band like the Beatles or Queen?
Oh, dude, are you kidding me? Oh, I would be on Queen in a heartbeat. I think that there is a few amount of times that you feel like you have the utmost power, and I feel like being a rock star would be one of them. Not even a hip hop artist, a literal like rock star.
Yeah, I think what some of those bands were doing back then, I would choose to be a lead singer of a band. Like some of those festivals or their turnouts they'd have that literally have hundreds of thousands of people show up to, and like the amount of power that was in the group of 4 to 5 guys' hands, like Freddie Mercury, or even look at like Slash, the guitarist, or the drummer for Def Leppard, like the things that people just knew them for, and it was just like shutting places down, was unbelievable. I guess the only exception to that would be like, I don't know how to phrase this. I would like to be Michael Jackson, but not Michael Jackson.
So Michael Jackson as far as, the fame and the skill of being an artist.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not associated with like the events.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the pure, probably sometime shortly after Thriller, Michael. Or no, shortly before Thriller.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think that, maybe that's just me and you. But I feel like that and maybe it's back in the day too. I mean, we're talking about bands that had their heyday, years ago, or like, tens of years ago. And so maybe that's just how it was back then, where, rock was crazy and people were super passionate because these guys were delivering a message that, the people almost needed at the time, if you know what I mean. And so that's why there was such a huge support and such a huge fandom or fan base for these guys. But yeah, I think I would take that 9 out of 10 times for sure.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I didn't really think about is a lot of those bands or the music around then, like all the artists today, like you can see them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever you want to see them on. So they're not as big, legends or gods or whatever you may want to call them, as back then, even like hip hop artists, or you didn't know what they're doing, like if you didn't see him at concert or that they weren't in the news. It was like, what's Tupac doing if he's not in the news? You don't know. So people went and saw him, right? Queen, like you don't know what they're doing or where they are until they're in Quebec or something like that. And you got to have this huge turnout. So maybe that's part of it. Or maybe it's just like, the short attention or just the variety of artists now that people, just go certain ways and don't go experience a lot of them or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a huge point too. I was just thinking about all the scenarios where we kind of put these guys on a pedestal. And so for instance, like, just think about Prince right now. Now I want everybody to think about Prince getting frustrated as he's in a traffic jam. Like something very pedestrian and normal that happens to all of us. Just put a famous person in there. And I feel like that's what social media and technology and being so connected does, is it shows the very human side. It shows the side of all of these guys that get upset when they get cut off in traffic or, are having a hard time figuring out what shirt to wear or simple stuff like that.
Yeah, and now like nowadays, they're all tweeting about it or putting it on their Snapchat or whatever, and you just get to see it every day. So maybe it's the saturation of seeing them doesn't have this turnout. But the other genre that has a huge turnout that I think is crazy is like EDC, like the Electric Dance Carnivals or circuses is what it stands for, and it's just basically DJs who put together these mixes of music and play it for these huge crowds. Where the concerts go from, like 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. So kind of the non-traditional, but like people, I guess that could be the next genre. Like DJs right now are kind of coming to the scene and just kind of killing it. So you look like Marshmello, Skrillex did it for a while. You have a few different artists in the game that are just slowly peeking their hands into mainstream music, and they're just putting out hits after hits.
Yeah, I mean, you could see that with, I think it was Avicii that had the Wake Me Up. Mm-hmm. And, and you also see like DJs and artists like Diplo, who's really big in the hip hop scene. I mean, he's mastered mixes for Riff Raff and a few other people. And granted, Riff Raff isn't the paragon of hip hop. But it just shows that these guys are kind of implementing more and more of themselves into the actual hip hop scene and spreading themselves out a little bit wider. And, the genre, I mean, not all the time do you see these guys, making, like trap music, basically saying like, a mix between EDM and rap or EDM and hip hop. You see them doing things like I mentioned before, Avicii, when I think that would almost tiptoe the line of like country. A lot of country fans like that music or that song specifically because it had a lot of tunes and ties to kind of what they've been used to hearing in country. So I think you're right in the fact that they are kind of expanding, and I feel like they've already exploded, but they're not slowing, their growth is still happening, and just people are more aware about them.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique scene over there. There's a lot going on in the EDC scene that I probably won't ever go to an EDC event or something. I mean, I did see Diplo in concert. I was at tag along. It wasn't like my first choice. Way too many people, but he was cool. But yeah, some of those, I saw a lot of those types in that concert I went to, and that, people really love them. Maybe it's they love the music or they love the atmosphere, but A and B to go together and you have a real good solution on the other end.
Yeah, exactly. Now the real question is like, are those fans the fans of the artists or the fans of the music? So would you see a following like you do with the Beatles with Diplo? Granted, in a relative scheme, and the fact that, do you think people would, just follow Diplo's every move, and the fact that, I think he's in my area. Let me wait at the mall for 5 hours to see, hopefully, if he comes through. Or let me see if I can get a locket of his hair if I get close enough to the stage. Things like, outrageous fan things that you'd see in almost the Beatles or, the Ramones or bands like that. Do you think that they are fans in that sense, or are they just fans of, we are here at this music festival to have a great time, and afterwards we're just going to nurse our hangovers and then wait for the next one and not really follow along as much?
I think it's equivalent but different. I think they are, like, if Diplo's in town, they might try to see him at a local spot. But I think those fans are more concerned instead about getting a signature, getting a like on their photo at the event, or getting a like on a retweet or something like that. That isn't tangible. It's like fans back then when you didn't have social media, you couldn't see him. That was it. Like that was your one shot to see him.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes total sense. One artist that I actually would be really awesome to see, just because I'm a fan of him and not specifically huge on his DJ work, but his other work is, did you know that Idris Elba is a DJ?
I've heard about him DJing. I've never heard any of his sounds, but I've heard about he kind of tour about just doing kick-ass stuff all around.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, obviously I'm a fan of, what he's doing as far as his acting career. He's also done a few things that I aspire to do in my life that I've yet to knock down, but are coming. And so just a fan of his overall dude, the dude just does shit. So
yeah, basically he's kind of been around, does it all. I enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. But, before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you think, the fans or the audience would want to know? What do you think about hip hop?
I think hip hop is alive and it's going to be alive for a while. I think hip hop is going to change quite a bit. And I think there's various differences. There's a lot of micro categories in hip hop where you can find your, what you like or don't like in it. It's just like jazz, like a lot of categories that you can go and find. If you don't like elevator music, you might like Frank Sinatra, right? So I think there's a lot going on in there. It's very intricate and there's a lot of money in hip hop.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's one of those things that, like you said, are going to change, and don't anticipate hearing the same sounds and songs that you're hearing today in 10 years or so. Granted, it'll probably be a slow, gradual shift, but there will definitely be a shift like there has been in the past. And besides that, I mean, the grand scheme of things is this music is here for you to enjoy, regardless if you're enjoying it as a one time, like, let's listen to this while we're getting turned, or let me really think about what this artist is saying. It's there for enjoyment, so don't forget to enjoy it. But,
yeah, I guess my last tidbit would be like, if you're younger and watching this and going to be a parent eventually, or you're a parent now and you're listening to this, like, there's no reason to be square about, like, this music isn't good. Like, in my day, they were a lot better. Like, yeah, sure, that's what you prefer. But, like, there's nothing more tiring than hearing, like, this isn't good, blah, blah, blah. Just, like, change the channel, my dude. Like, do something else.
Yeah, you don't have to listen to it. You can listen to your old stuff. It's fine.
Yeah, there's no wrong in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I want to thank you guys for watching or listening again. So you got me on this thing. But, catch you guys later.
Skirt, skirt.